All right, back for another forensic happy hour. To be honest with you, the weeks I always they say they fly by, but honestly, I think it was just Monday. Although it just might be because I wait for the day to drink beer and talk some forensics today with Kevin Ripa. I think this is going to be quite interesting, simply because fantastic experience, if we want to say from up north, but you know what? It's all over. It's a world type of thing. So I know we're going to have a good conversation as always because it just could go sideways. It's always, we're at the edge of our seats. We're not quite sure if it's going to. If it does, you never know. But things are looking good. I'm feeling good about this. Okay, so as we always do here on the Forensic Happy Hour, we give our cheers. And fantastic. Kevin, it's great to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And we will just continue on, obviously, the dialogue because it takes a little while to set this thing up. But I'm really excited because honestly, I mean, don't get a big head and all that other stuff, but you have been in the business and your name is always around, and your name is always in a positive sense, you know, especially in the community. And I know there's a lot of things that you have done and a lot of things that you're currently doing. So, you know, as we always start out this happy hour, is just, you know, give everyone's kind of a background. I mean, you know, where you know, how you got started, what you were doing, and then, you know, where you're at today.
Okay, well, I'm gonna kind of do that backwards because I want to respond to the whole big head thing, and when I'm teaching and when I'm talking to crowds of people, and especially junior forensicators, I always say to them, it doesn't matter how much your name is out there. It doesn't matter what you've done. Always, always, always remember, you're nothing more than a fist in a bucket of water. You pull your
Love it.
fist out, it's like you were never there. Anybody that thinks they can't be replaced, well, guess what? Things went on before you and things will go on after you. So I never lose
I
sight of
love it.
that. You know, as long as my 7-year-old still thinks I'm cool, that's all I aspire to every single day.
Right.
So let's see. How did I get started? My gosh, it's a long and twisted, sordid saga that does not have a direct line. We could talk for days about how I got to where I got, but I'll give you the Cliff's Notes.
Right.
I had left school early. I finished grade 10. I didn't even quite finish grade 10. Joined the Army. I was in the Canadian Army for 12 years. Yes, we do have an army. It's not very big. To give you an example, you have more fighter aircraft on one aircraft carrier than we've got in our entire Air Force. You have more pieces of armor than we have soldiers, but we punch way above our weight.
Right. Right. There you go.
So anyway, I left the fire department, or I left the military, and I started an investigation and security company. And I was doing well, a lot of bodyguard work, kidnap and ransom transfers, child abduction recoveries, high-risk extractions, things like that. But of course, being in Canada, there's not a lot of call for bodyguard work because nobody in Canada thinks anybody wants to do anything bad to them. So along the way, I got hired on as a firefighter in the city of Calgary. And I spent 12 years with the fire department. But while I was with, of course, every firefighter's got a second job. So I continued with the security stuff and building that up. And just a complete, I was doing an abduction recovery out of, let's just say somewhere in the southern United States. And whenever we do that, we always make a relationship with someone on the ground there, an investigator who knows the layout of the land and things like that, and can maybe help us out if things go sideways. Well, the guy that I had reached out to in this case became a brother from another mother. And a couple of months after the case, we were in a news group together. Remember back in days of Outlook
Right.
Express and news groups.
Right.
And
Right.
this troll was in there. And this troll decided to make threats to my friend, and then threatened his son. And well, you don't do that to the ex-chief of police of Gun Barrel City, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, at that time, we're talking late 90s. Nobody knew anything about email or where it comes from or how it gets there. But we knew we had to find this guy. So we spent the next 16 months uh, just testing and sending emails back and forth. And we set up servers at both ends. And whenever we would get stuck, we would call people like exchange administrators and say, there's this line in this header. How did it get there? Well, the usual response was, I don't know, the computers do that, and I don't know how that gets there. So anyway, after about 16 months, we had it all dialed in and believe it or not, tracked this guy down. And then once that was done, decided, you know what, there's something to this. And so we put a training class together and spent the next probably 2 or 3 years traveling all over North America, teaching law enforcement and investigators email tracing, internet profiling. Now they call it OSINT, but we weren't that creative back then. We just called it internet profiling. And so that was my first kind of foray into computers. And then a student in our class who bills himself, or at the time billed himself, as the PI to the stars. He said, yeah, I came to this class. I don't want to learn what you know. I just need to know if you can do what you say you can do.
Oh.
So he, at the end of the class, believed we could and reached out and said, I've got a client in Hollywood being stalked online, and we need to find the stalker. And it turned out that the client wasn't a client. It was 2 clients, twins. That's as far as I'll go. And they were very young at the time, but we were able to track down the stalker. And of course, that got the phone kind of ringing because at that time, you've got all kinds of celebrities and the internet's fairly new, at least for general use. And now all of these, what we call punters, are finding the stars online. And so we're getting calls from them. Can you help us out? Can you tell us how we can protect ourselves? And so through that, I ended up meeting another guy who does a lot of digital forensics in the greater Los Angeles area. And it turned out that he was doing a thing called privacy masking, which was basically assuming the persona of the celebrity online. So that police would go through him with a subpoena because they couldn't get to the stars anymore. Mm-hmm. One thing led to another, and it kind of crossed back. And that's kind of around the time that I got into digital forensics. So we're talking 2000-ish. And then as a complete sideways to that, one of the celebrities that I had met was a drummer in a rock band. And they decided that they were going to go back out on tour.
It's a 4-letter.
It's 4 letters, yes. And God rest his soul, he's just recently passed. But so then I was on the security team and artist liaison for the rock group Rush. Nothing's changed since the last tour. So if Getty and Al ever decided to do something, I imagine I'd probably get a call. So I was on every world tour with them for, since 2003 or 4, something like that. And during all of that time, started getting more and more into cyber. Imagine my surprise, Lee, when I found out one day that when you delete a file, it's not honestly deleted. Well, that was the end of that. I had to know how this works. And the rest is history. It progressed through the digital forensics, primarily dead box. Of course, back then, we had it easy. I don't need to tell you. Back then, it was, you had one browser. You had an operating system that fit on floppy disks. It was so much easier back then. So, when the students say to me today, how do you know all of this stuff? I tell them, I don't know how you can learn all this stuff. I had it easy because I grew with the knowledge. Now we're just putting dump trucks of knowledge on you. And so then I kind of branched out into incident response and have been doing that and a little bit of infosec. Infosec more from the perspective of gaining knowledge into how the adversary acts in an environment, which I feel makes me more effective as an incident responder and forensic specialist. And probably a goodly chunk of the work that I do today is I've got a bit of a name in the criminal defense area. So I do quite a bit of criminal defense cases.
Hmm. So a question that I have too, as part of that is, um, I mean, from how you started out into it and how you currently, I guess, the IR side of it, would you say that you enjoy that more because you have kind of a investigative, almost like, hey, give me this and I'm going to find out this type of thing, where you're putting the pieces together rather, than doing the forensic side of it. What I guess I'm just asking, what do you prefer, kind of you know the IP chase type of thing and tracking someone down or for something, rather than saying, okay, here's an image of a hard drive. I'm just going to go through this.
You know, I can see where someone might think that I would like the IR stuff better, but I'm just a dyed in the wool forensicator. I love, if I've got the choice, I'll take forensics over IR. Don't get me wrong, love a great IR case. Um, you know, Believe it or not, it's going to make me seem weird, but I would even rather take a business email compromise case over a traditional IR. I don't know, but I'm a dyed in the wool forensicator. I just and dead box. Everybody's moving on the wire these days, and I'm comfortable on the wire, but I'm just a dead box guy at heart.
Yeah. So, and going through that, I guess what has kept you in the business, right? Obviously, you've been doing this. You see, is it the hunt? Is it the what excites you about doing what you do? I know that obviously. Well, I want to touch on kind of your training side of it, but what keeps you in the business?
Every single time the phone rings, it's something different. It's the similarity is I've got a computer or I've got a phone, and that's where the similarity ends. Every case is different. I mean, I now I've got to say that being in the private sector, running my own shop, I get to pick and choose what I take, and I've been blessed enough that I have reached that position, so I can say no when I want to say no. In the early days, it wasn't like that, but even still, it is. Every case is different. I know that if you work for certain companies, maybe you're doing the same thing all the time. You're just you're a button monkey going out and doing acquisitions for the first 2 years. Or even, I've had people through my shop that worked for maybe some big accounting firm, we'll say, and they'll say that what they call forensics is mostly data collection. And but we in my shop, we cover the gamut. If you can think of it, we've probably done some of it, and that's what it is. Just it's always something different. I can't wait to get up in the morning to do what I do.
Yeah. So I guess that is, and I led you to this question because I think that that's really what keeps a lot of people that have been doing it for a while into it, because it's almost like, being a patrol officer. A patrol officer, you're out there and you don't know in that 10-hour shift what you're going to do, and it's going to be different each day, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to either overcome. And quite honestly, I see it as two ways. Again, my opinion is that, one, everything's different in an investigation. It's not, I'm going to go A to Z type of thing on a digital forensic type stuff, and things. But one case that you might have that might be some exploitation case, or you might have one case that's just think of it as some email. It's different, right? So you're coming into it, but now put on top of it the progression of data storage types, the different applications. I mean, that puts it even on top of coming every day, because every day there's a new application, or that's out there. So I mean, that just to put that into perspective. I mean, I always equate it as like, it's patrol, man. You show up, today was great, I worked that, and I show up tomorrow, it's could be completely different.
Yep. Yep, exactly. And it's, even if it's something like, well, we just had two cases come through, both phone cases, both we need the Snapchat off the phone. And even that, I mean, that sounds like, okay, well, it's just, follow this checklist, but it's not. I mean, you of all people would know no two devices are the same. And even if they're both iPhone 6S, if one's a certain iOS and another's a different iOS, it's going to be a totally different case.
Yeah. Different carrier, all that other stuff.
Exactly. And so even when it's the same, it's different. When I was in the Army, we were, in too many places around the world. And people would say when they didn't have that great grasp on English, same, only different. And it's exactly that. It's always different. Every day is different.
What's I guess your investigation? I mean, what is something that you just like going, oh, this is my bread and butter? I mean, what is it that I don't want to say enjoy, because I know that you enjoy everything that you do. It doesn't matter. But I mean, what do you sit down and say, oh yeah, there is no way, this is going to get by me?
Wow.
I know I get deep, super deep. The more beer I drink.
Well, I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but this is where I'm going to go with that. I love doing criminal defense work. Let me rephrase that. I used to love doing criminal defense work more than I do now. I still enjoy it because there is still enough cases where they're innocent, but nobody understands the evidence. And so the evidence as presented, that's absolutely going to pass muster. And that's absolutely going to sink somebody, unless there's someone else to explain, hold on a second, this is what really happened. The worst case I ever worked was a case where law enforcement had put 680 child pornographic images on an individual's hard drive and didn't realize they'd done it, did it totally by accident, and then charged him with it because they found it. And well, it must have been him. It's his computer. And it was absolutely on the computer. There's no question this material is there. And, being able to unravel exactly what happened. And, they had triggered a virus, which downloaded a script, which caused all kinds of redirects and took over the browser, and a pop-up attacked a whole bit. But and this was back in the days before Nearsoft tools. And I mean, Encase was still in version 3. And so you had to rebuild these pages, page by page, picture by picture, put them all in the right place. And I used to love that. Nowadays, though, I mean, I still like the criminal defense stuff, but I find today that there's too many accused who think they're the smartest person in the room. And, people look down their nose at defense experts, and I get it. I've talked to enough FBI agents and other law enforcement to get why they dislike us. But I'm one of these defense experts that I'm not a defense expert, to the exclusion of everything else. I tell the lawyers that call me, right now there's one person in the room who knows exactly what happened on that computer. And when I'm done, there's going to be 2 of us. And that person can lie to their family, they can lie to you, they can lie to whoever they want, but the data doesn't lie. And I am not here to cast doubt. I am here to explain what happened. If it helps you, it helps you. If it doesn't help you, well, it's your choice to put me on the stand or not. And I just find that more and more today, more and more guilty people are either thinking that they're so smart they'll get away with it as long as they keep saying, I didn't do it, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. Or they think they'll get away with it because Well, you're gonna find some doubt, right? Like a virus could have done it, right? And I mean, I don't need to tell you the virus defense and the Saudi defense. Some other dude did it. And I always say to them, the virus defense, well, and that's a double-edged sword, right? Because law enforcement will say that to me when I'm talking to them. They'll say,
Sure.
"Oh, but you guys always bring up the virus defense." And I say, "Well, don't beat me up over that, because what you should have done is what I did. I actually checked if a virus did it. Because if you'd actually done that, and I bring up the notion of a virus, which, by the way, I don't bring up unless I've got a good reason to,
Mm-hmm.
then your response should be, well, as a matter of fact, we considered that. And we mounted the image and we scanned it 3 different ways, this way, this way, this way. And we found no evidence of malware. Or we found 2 pieces of malware, but they were designed to do XYZ, not ABC. If you did that, I can't hurt you at all.
So in kind of going off of that, what would you say? As in, obviously, you're consulting with your client, and you're giving them the information of your examination. I mean, what would you say the percentage? And obviously, rough percentage or whatever is that the attorney goes, okay, yeah, thank you for your time, and I'll talk to my client. You know what I'm saying? Is that they're
Exactly.
like going, yeah, they're like, yeah, no, thank you, great job.
The response is usually more like, well, I guess I can't put you on the stand, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. So what would you say? I mean, those people that hire you, because you're the type of person that's going to go, oh, not boom. You're going to dive into it. You're going to go and make sure that you're covering all of your bases. You're going to make sure that you are covering everything. It's not just go, hey, what can I find to make sure I get this guy off? Obviously, it's just going in and making sure you find. So I guess what would you say is the percentage of those cases that they're like, yeah, okay, not going to put you on?
I would say probably about 20, maybe 20% are
Mm-hmm.
like that. In still in most cases, it's a case of where they're either innocent and there's a very good explanation for what happened. It's just that whoever did the investigation hasn't thought that way or doesn't have enough training.
Mm-hmm.
And let me be clear, I am pro law enforcement. 1000%. I grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan. The RCMP were 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And if you were ever in trouble, that's where you turned.
Yeah.
And I still very much feel that way, even in today's climate, shall we say. Um, there's bad people everywhere, in every walk of life, in every industry, in every calling, in every profession.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, I do believe that the overwhelming majority of law enforcement is trying to do it right, is trying to do a good job, and is faced with so much adversity. When it comes to tech crimes, um, it's horrible what they're asked to do with what they've got to do it with. You're being told you need to be all things to all people. And a good example that I like to use is in a normal police department, a big city police department, you'll have something like the white collar crime unit, okay? And different departments call it different things, but they used to have, okay, there's 7 detectives here, and that's all they do is white collar crime. Well, fast forward to today, where there's more white collar crime happening online than in a real world, and those 7 detectives are still over there doing bricks and mortar white collar crime. But yet these tech crimes guys over here are having to do the online white collar crime and the murders and extortions and embezzlements and drugs and child porn and everything else. Every tech crimes unit in North America could double their people power overnight and still not have enough people to do the work that needs to be done. And that's just the work that needs to be done. Never mind the training that they're not getting. And sadly, that comes out sometimes when, they make
Yeah.
assumptions about artifacts that they shouldn't have. They're working off the best information they have, but and I don't know if you guys have it in the U.S., but in Canada, we have a real issue with major police departments with something called attrition. And
Oh yeah.
what that is, at least here in Calgary, and I rail about it to any senior law enforcement I ever talk to, where if you go into a unit, whether it be TAC or cyber crimes or tech crimes or whatever, 10 years says you're not allowed to be there more than 6 years. And then you have to get out and go to another unit.
Yep.
6 years, Lee, I don't need to tell you, you're just
Yeah.
starting to get good.
Yeah.
And now you're out
Yeah.
the door.
Well, the bad part about that, I mean, there's some federal agencies. I won't mention the federal agency, but they allow 4 years to be within the forensic side of it. 4 years, that's it. And 4 years is absolutely, you're not even trained
How do you expect
to do that and to work on it. So no, it's the same thing is that they rotate. It's the same thing. They're like, okay, a forensic guy, he's just like a gang guy, or he's just like a child porn investigator, or he's just like a narc. Okay, it's a lot different, right?
Yeah.
Narcotics completely different. You get in, you get in bed and some of those. I mean, forensic stuff. The work is it changes every day, and to expect someone who's green to go out, because typically a lot of these departments, they have one guy that's handling everything with a 0 and a 1, right? So they're handling everything, and they're like, oh yeah, yeah. So we have to go and rotate him out. Makes no sense. I agree. So, but I want to ask you this, because this is, I mean, you went right into it. I didn't even tell you to do this, but so on the training side of it, I know that 100% that I know that your heart is in helping people to understand really not the limitations that they have, but how can they be better? How can they be better at what they do? Because you really see both sides of it, right? And you want everyone to do as best they can. So I know with SANS and everything else that you're doing. So talk to me about that, and really the training. How can people be better in doing these cases?
Well, a lot of people, and I get this question a lot, and a lot of people say, well, what course should I take? What this, what that? Well, that's kind of the wrong question. I mean, certainly there's courses that I can recommend. Let's face it. Call me partial.
Your class.
Well, I was actually going to say Forensics 500 first, which is your dyed-in-the-wool, meat and potatoes, dive in deep digital forensics class from SANS. But it had gaps. And its biggest gaps were the fact that it didn't teach acquisition, and we've come a long way from dead box acquisition. And it didn't cover rapid triage analysis, except in the very basic forms. And today we're having to deal with analysis from dead box, live machine. In some cases, you can't shut the machine off, or you won't ever get anything again. RAM acquisition, phones, Internet of Things, servers, VMs, vSphere, you name it. We're grabbing data from so many different places, and that's not covered there. So, and then triage acquisition. Drives are getting so big now, it's taking us days to image and verify a drive before we can even start pulling it apart with the Gorilla tools that we have. Mm-hmm. And so I had come up with a plan for a class to kind of cover those blind spots. And I approached Eric Zimmerman. Hey, you want to do this with me? I mean, you want to talk about a name in the industry is Eric Zimmerman.
Yeah. His name comes up, and I give props to him every forensic. Yeah. He was on here, and fantastic. Right? Anyway, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
So him and I wrote a class called Battlefield Forensics and Digital Acquisition and Data Acquisition. And I can't even tell you the I don't know, the pushback we got over that name. People said, what is this? We're going, we don't all go to Afghanistan. No, it's the battlefield of forensics. And unless you've done forensics for a while, you aren't going to understand what I mean. Every day is like a day in the trenches. And so anyway, we wrote the class, and it covers all of these different kinds of acquisitions. As a matter of fact, I'm right hip deep in the middle of some major updates to the class. But so we do that, and then we talk about triage acquisition. And our tagline is from seizure to actionable intelligence in 90 minutes or less. How do we move the ball fast? And so, of course, there's those classes, but Lee, I don't need to tell you, and I'm the first one to complain about it, how expensive SANS classes are. Ridiculous. And I'm a small outfit. When I first took a couple of SANS classes, I took them for no other reason than to get a certification because lawyers were starting to ask for this. I mean, I come from the days that you come from, Lee, where there was no training. You learned it yourself. You sat down with a hex editor and a whole bunch of time and trial and error, and you just banged away and you clicked and you pulled and see what happens. I feel like so much of that is gone today. You know, there's not a lot of people that want to do that. They all want that shortcut. How do I get from here to there? And so notwithstanding the money side of things, I don't think, and maybe I'm biased, but I don't think that you need to spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on courses. Not to say that they're bad. If you've got the money, you couldn't spend it any better than on 498 and 500 and then branch out from there. But that doesn't mean, let's say you've taken those classes. So what? How do you now channel that to get better? How do you keep up with changes? And I would say that some of the best ways to do that is to follow the right people. You know, follow the people that are doing blogs. There's some awesome people doing some phenomenal blogging out there. You know, it's just, and if you don't know which blogs to follow, This Week in Forensics, Phil Moore.
Phil Moore.
Can't beat that. I mean, I don't have time to surf around the internet looking for what's good or what's bad. Phil Moore, look at that. He'll tell you what's good this week. Go read the stuff in his list. And, you know, there's not a lot of people I'll throw money at, but that's one that I do support through Patreon. I think he does a phenomenal job. And so you follow stuff like that and you grab it in little tidbits. Don't think you're going to learn everything all at once, because that's never going to happen. But how do you take things to the next level? Because we know a lot of things. But I'll give you an example, something that I dove in head first, right up to my ankles here not too long ago. This notion, so USB forensics. We have always been told you go to the USB store in the registry, the System Hive, USB store, and it'll list all the USB devices that were ever plugged in, expand the tree, and the serial number's there. And if the second character isn't an ampersand, that's a unique serial number. Guess what? That's not a serial number. It's a device ID. And we've been calling that a serial number for decades.
Right.
Come to find out, the serial number is not shown from there. And so I did a whole bunch of research and studies and stuff on different USB sticks and different types of drives. And I don't know if you can see that.
Got
Guess
it.
what? You plug that in, that's not showing up under USB store. It's going to be under the SCSI key. Right. Who knew? And so, you know, how do you keep up on stuff like that? Because stuff like that takes a while to wind its way into training material. So that's
yeah, and I think that is oh, well, I don't want to say that's a problem, right? I think that is, I don't want to, that's not a benefit either. A benefit for those who are in the industry, but you have to start thinking about, you know, back in the day, you're either, well, not even back in the day, you're doing everything. And then some people maybe migrate to do certain things, maybe mobile phones type of stuff. But now, I mean, now we're just talking. I mean, you're really breaking this down. Do you feel that people need to specialize or just need to know everything? Because honestly, the everything thing is pretty difficult, right? The fire hose methodology. Or do you say it? Let's break it down to the hex side of it, and it doesn't matter what the device and the information that's laid out there, as long as you have, you know, you can follow the practices of that to actually find it. Like you said, you had to go in and you had to discover this information for yourself. But my question, this follow-up to that is, do people really want to do that now?
Well, first of all, you can't know everything. That's just, it's not going to happen. It's just not, and I don't mean to blow my own horn, but, you know, people in class say, how can you know all of that? Is there anything you don't know? There is so much I don't know, And every morning my wife reminds me how much I don't know. But no, seriously, it's
Exactly.
like the more I forensicate and the more research that I do, the more I realize I don't know. But that's what keeps me going. So I don't necessarily mean that, well, geez, to be any good, you've got to specialize. I know there's people that specialize. There's people that all they do is reverse engineering malware all day long. I couldn't do it. Way too tedious for me. Could not. Live in a hex editor? No. No. I mean, I used to, and I still love a good hex editor. Let's face it, in on day 6 of our class, we go in and we recover partial pieces of files in unallocated file space with a hex editor and rebuild them so they open again. So I mean, I enjoy that, but I understand that the vast majority of people, they're just not in that space. So no, you
Mhm.
can't know everything. But what I think is key is that you know where to look when you need to.
Yeah.
Have
Agreed.
that list of people that you can call. I mean, if it's a phone, I'm calling Heather Mahalik. If it's Apple, I'm calling Sarah Edwards. I mean, I've got lists of people that I can call for a variety of different issues or problems. And I like to do, not that I don't trust people, but it doesn't matter what people tell me. I
Mhm.
take what they tell me as a jumping off point, and then I go in and I do it myself. It isn't that I don't trust tools. I
You
want to
should.
know how the tool is doing it. And so, hey, to me, a tool is exactly that. It's a tool that gets you from here to here very quickly. But if the here is something that the entire case hinges on, then the tool got you here. Now I'll go in, command line, hex editor, whatever.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that what the tool is showing me is
I think
correct.
that's a huge point. That's a huge, huge point for people to understand, and hopefully people take that back because that's the important part, right? A tool is that, just a tool, right? You need to understand, that your case. You're not going to go in and dive in and make sure that the tool's doing it for every artifact that it might find, right? But if you have a case and this case hinges on that, you need to understand. You need to understand exactly how that data lives, how that data is pulled out, how that data is formatted. Because if you trust a tool, you're going to wind up, if you have to testify to this or you're going to have to write a report to this, you might be looking pretty funky when they're like, yeah, no. So this is exactly, the tool was incorrect in its conversion of the data, right? So the point that I'm making that you actually brought up is exactly that, is that people give you information, a tool gets you information, but it does two things when you can verify that information. One, it makes you smarter, right? You understand that artifact. You can now go in and now testify to that information. I think that's a big takeaway because trusting a tool and saying that's gospel, and then now going in and either testifying to that or presenting that to, say, your boss or the corporation. It's Unless you know where that came from, I think that is going to be a big issue. And unfortunately, I think that there are a lot of investigators that simply do that. Would you
You're
agree
right.
or disagree?
I agree with that. I think that, but it's like I said earlier, with any industry, you're going to have what I call the bad apples. Okay. The people who want the big money for doing Nintendo forensics. But then there is a very, very large group of people, law enforcement and large corporation, who are they're push button forensicators. And it isn't that they don't care. It's that they don't have the time or the access to training.
That's a good
And
point.
so that makes them have to rely on their tool maybe more than they should. And let's face it, there is not a single tool out there that is the last word in anything. Ncase is not the greatest tool. FTK is not the greatest tool. Xways is not the greatest tool. No one thing is the greatest tool. Celebrite's not the greatest tool. Oxygen's not the greatest. But I try to tell people, whatever you're using, make sure you've got something else to use as maybe a verification, to double check the work, because what you do matters. And I say this to everybody that I teach, every single class that I teach. In forensics, more so than anything else, in any other area in computing, what you do matters. And I don't care whether you're law enforcement, you're working for the accounting firm, the bank, you're an internal DFIR team, what you do matters. And the work that you do has the ability to put someone in jail or not, has the ability to get somebody fired or not, you're being asked to answer questions which in large part have to do with who done it. And if you put the finger on the wrong person, especially with computer crime, and let's take that one step further, especially with something like child exploitation cases, you can't unring that bell. And that is one of those stigmas that it doesn't matter if the truth comes out, the truth will never come out on the front page like the accusation did. And it ruins people's lives. So no matter what you do in digital forensics, no matter who you work for, what area of the industry you're coming from, even if it's an incident response team where you're always after nation state threat actors, what you do matters. And if you don't get up every morning thinking that to yourself and taking your job that seriously, Starbucks is always hiring baristas.
Right. I think that is probably the the best point someone can take away, right? Is if we did, use your powers for good. In that, and understanding that every case that you work is there's an actually a human being on the other side of that, right? And that making sure that you are one taking pride in what you do, and not simply just relying on this. Well, yeah, whatever happens to this person. There's always, I guess, and there's something that's going to happen to that person that might have been, the accused, because it's not simply as like, hey, there's a dog that was using this phone or this computer, and yeah, we're going to take care of it. It's always going to be obviously an individual in that. So tell me, and we'll kind of wrap this up, but tell me, because I always ask people, because it makes them watch till the end, is what can you give to someone? I mean, an artifact that either, you already talked about USB sort, and that is, again, fantastic tidbit, is, I mean, what is something on the investigation that you're doing to make sure either computers, mobiles, or whatever, that you either said, oh my gosh, smoking gun type of data, or stuff that you've actually, you researched, and something that you can give to, someone's been doing it 100 years to someone who's doing it 1 year, right? What kind of artifact?
Lee, I can't give you one artifact. Come on.
I have to dial it to one.
Okay, put me on the spot. I'll give you one, but before I give you the one, I'm going to say this, and call it a shameless plug. I don't get anything out of it. There's a lot of stuff online, and the majority of it comes out in 1 hour webinars. And if you're like me, you watch it halfway through, and more times than not, it turns out to not be what it was advertised, and you've lost half an hour. I'm too busy for that. So I came out with these things called 3 minutes max. They're 3-minute videos in digital forensics. You name it. If you want the best artifact at number one, there's 125 and counting 3 minutes max little things on YouTube, and every single one of them goes to a different little artifact. How to use it, what is the goodness that you take out of it. But I'm going to tell you
before you go, where do people get that? I mean, how can they go and look that up?
3 minutes max Ripa.
I was just going to say the URL. I'll make sure it's in social media. We'll put it up there.
But I will tell you, one of my favorite artifacts, and it's not one, I'll give you one of my favorites, and I'll give you one that I use all the time. One of my favorites is actually an event log, but a specific event log. And it is the O alerts event log. And so many forensicators are completely unaware of this event log. It's on by default. Hey, love that. O alerts is office alerts. When you close a Word document and you forgot to save it, you get the box that pops up and says, hey, do you want to save the changes to such and such a document? That whole message, date, and time is in an event log. It's, I believe the event ID is, I want to say 300, but don't quote me on that. And there's few enough of them that you can actually look through the whole list by your eye. You don't need a machine. And the cool thing is, if you're looking, people say, well, what do I care if somebody forgot to save changes? I'll tell you why. because Lee works in the mailroom, or Lee's an executive assistant, or Lee is part of sales. And we just found in O-alerts on Lee's computer, do you want to save the changes to metasploit commands.docx? Hey, that's pretty significant. I love O-alerts. The magic you can get out of that is unbelievable. But for a number one artifact, I love prefetch. Evidence of execution. Absolutely somebody ran it. 1,024 prefetches. You'll never see that many on a computer. You get 9 timestamps, the first and the last 8. How many times it was run? And you want a cooler takeaway? The files that were accessed in the last iteration are going to be listed with the prefetch. So if somebody runs something like sdelete or some file wiping program before they got fired or before they ran out the door, the files they wiped are going to be in that prefetch list. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Gold,
right.
forensic gold.
Oh, I'm telling you, that is that unbelievable information. And everyone, see, I force them to watch to the end, so they may fast forward to the end. You never know, but at least they have that. I want to say, last drink. The time, Kevin. I mean, unbelievable, and I do appreciate you spending your Friday on this and giving people a little bit of the community some information, right? How to start up. I mean, so much good stuff, and I do appreciate it.
You can find me online anywhere. Just Google my name. Always happy to talk. Field emails, kevin.ripa@gmail.com. Happy to answer any questions anytime.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for
having
me.
Next time. All right. Okay, another Forensic Happy Hour down, and quite honestly, I think we could have gone a long time. There is one, we talked about, education. We talked about the different type of cases. We talked about, obviously, and I will post to make sure that you guys can get to the YouTube for the 3 minutes for the artifacts, because, just what we just covered, those 2 artifacts, amazing stuff that I'm like, man, I wish I was still doing computers, because that sounds super fun, and grabbing some of that data. But again, thank you guys all for sharing your Friday. Make sure that you guys, hey, subscribe to this, watch it, listen to it, because if you don't want to look at me, you can always just listen to it, and don't have to stare at my face. So I appreciate everyone's time. Again, next week, same time, we'll have it live. Of course, you can watch the recording, but it's better to watch us live. And enjoy your Friday. Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for attending. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks. Bye.